Moana 2 had a really big opening weekend when it hit theaters, so what did you think about it?
I thought it was okay. Wasn't really that excited about it after the movie finished, but it still looks really good on a big screen.
Yeah, I kind of thought you might be thinking that when we left the theater. So for listeners, the story of Moana 2 takes place a few years after the end of the first film. In a nutshell, it boils down to Moana putting a team of new characters together, and they band together with Maui to lift a curse over a lost island. There is a villain, but this real villain only appears in an end credit scene.
That's the storm god, right? Yeah, I didn't get his name. It felt strange to not have the villain more featured in the main story.
Well, one caveat for this movie is that it's been publicly reported that it was initially a Disney Plus streaming series that was converted into a feature film. The animation production work was done at a Canadian studio in Vancouver, so knowing that there was a more episodic nature to the original version of the story as a series, I wonder what changed going into making it a more condensed story for theaters. I realized that part of the first movie's strong appeal comes from having a very clear and satisfying relationship arc between Moana and Maui.
And I don't think we get that in the second movie. I mean, we see Moana and Maui reunite, but the two of them don't meet up until much later on. So it feels like we don't really get a lot of time to see how the relationship develops further.
That's true, because we see more of Moana interacting with the newer characters who form her team, but none of those relationships match the scope of her relationship to Maui from the first film. I think that highlights a key part of writing stories, which is that having a central relationship developing and driving the theme of the movie is a great storytelling concept. Maybe that's why there are some fans who aren't as enthusiastic about the second movie after seeing it, because they wanted to see more of that Moana and Maui connection.
So you said Moana 2 was originally a series, and I feel like the first two acts of the story, they really feel episodic. Like they're scenes from what would be, like episodes of a show. The first Moana movie started off so strong because Moana had this dream, and she wanted to see life beyond her island, so it was a classic hero's journey.
The last act feels like what could be, or what would be, a climax of a movie, with Moana, Maui, and the team navigating through a series of storms around the lost island, trying to break the curse without getting killed. Visually, it feels like a high-stakes situation because it's a life-or-death scenario. I think a key part of that hero's journey is for your protagonist to go through a transformative process by having to say goodbye to or losing a former part of themselves. It's a maturation process, and I don't think we get a clear sense of that. I'm trying to think back, looking at the story, because we see Moana sacrifice her life to break the island's curse. She is then revived and gets a series of new tattoos.
I get it, but what did she lose or let go of? Isn't that what you said about a hero having to lose something so they grow up in the process? The story in Moana 2 feels like the characters, especially Moana, like they're going from one set piece to the next, but they don't really grow in any deep way through the journey.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something as we think about what could make it a stronger story. I wonder if there could be a different version of the movie where Moana has taken on this identity as a wayfinder, but she has a crisis of faith or a crisis of identity near the second act, which has to feel really significant. Maybe she would doubt her abilities or self-worth and be tempted to walk away from her mission. We sort of have a moment like that after their raft gets destroyed, but I think we need something stronger.
Well, maybe Moana has to dig deep within herself to find some kind of new inner strength, I guess, like to keep going on her mission.
Could be. We're talking very generally right now about big, amorphous story beats, but I think when you set up a character with a core set of clearly defined values, then you have that character go on a journey where those beliefs get tested and maybe even shattered. This then forces them to rethink and reevaluate what they believe in. And the choice they make to either believe or not to believe, or to recognize a deeper truth and value, is what reveals their character, and this makes the story more satisfying. So in Moana 2, maybe Moana has to redefine what it means to be a wayfinder. Maybe it's no longer about her own dream, but she's finding a new reason to do it because it matters for her family, her community, or something larger. This feels like it's a different story than what we saw on screen, but it could be a story about letting a dream die that you've always wanted, and then you discover a new one because it's more true.
So basically like Elphaba when she sings Defying Gravity in Wicked. I was just thinking of that scene for her because it's a huge turning point.
That's a good comparison. There might be something in refining these story ideas we're brainstorming.
I would love to make a new Moana story that's stronger because, honestly, my girl deserves all the best.